When I was little, there was always one empty chair at our dinner table. My mother would set it anyway, polish the fork, smooth the napkin, and then act like she hadn't done it. I used to stare at that chair, wondering if it had a memory of who used to sit there, the weight of him, the sound of him, the warmth that once filled that space. But to me, my father was only a story, a faded outline in my mother's bitterness. She'd say, "Your father was a man who chose freedom over family." I didn't know what freedom meant, but the way she said it, sharp and tight, like she was spitting out a thorn, told me it wasn't a good thing. Growing up, I learned not to ask. Every question about him was met with a silence so heavy it rearranged the air. I filled in the blanks myself. Maybe he was a traveler, an artist, someone too full of dreams to stay. In my mind, he was tragic, misunderstood, the kind of man who wrote letters he never sent. By the time I turned 20, I had stopped mentioning him altogether. It was easier to pretend I didn't care. But inside, there was this ache. The ache of unfinished sentences and unanswered whys. I could forgive the leaving. What I couldn't forgive was the mystery. For years, life went on. I built a career, a home, the kind of stability I thought he had thrown away. Yet every time something good happened, a promotion, a birthday, even the day I bought my first car, I imagined telling him. I didn't even know what his voice sounded like, but I imagined it soft and proud, saying, "That's my girl." Then, one rainy afternoon, I found an old shoebox in my mother's attic. Inside were things that didn't belong to me, faded photos, a silver watch, and a single postcard. On the back, in hurried handwriting, were 5 words. "Sorry I missed your birthday." The postmark was 20 years old, the address smudged but still legible. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake thinking about that address. Was he still there? Was he alive? Did he think of me at all? Curiosity turned into obsession. I searched online, called directories, sent letters that came back unopened. But something in me refused to let it go. I had lived too long with the silence. I needed to hear the truth, even if it hurt. When I finally found him, it was almost by accident. A retired mail clerk I'd spoken to remembered forwarding his mail years ago to a small town 2 hours away. That's where I drove on a cold Saturday morning, with my hands trembling on the steering wheel. I rehearsed what I'd say. "Hi, Dad. I'm your daughter. I've missed you." Simple words, fragile and impossible. His house was smaller than I imagined. Peeling paint, an overgrown yard, a porch swing that creaked with the wind. When he opened the door, I almost didn't recognize him. His face was thinner, eyes ringed with exhaustion, but there was something unmistakable in his smile, or maybe in the hesitation behind it. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then I blurted out, "It's me. He interrupted softly. "I know who you are." My throat burned. I waited for him to hug me, to ask 1,000 questions, to fill in the missing years. Instead, he glanced over my shoulder, as if checking to see if someone was watching. His voice dropped low. "Don't tell your mother you found me." Those were his first words to me. After 20 years, that was it. Not "I'm sorry," not "I've missed you." Just an order, a secret. I stood there frozen. I wanted to laugh or scream or maybe both. But instead I nodded. I don't even know why. Maybe because I was still that little girl staring at the empty chair, waiting for approval. He stepped aside, letting me in. The house smelled like stale coffee and loneliness. On the walls were old photographs, none of me. He offered me tea, sat across from me, and asked about my life in the most casual tone, like we were strangers meeting on a train. I told him about my job, about the apartment I'd just bought, about how Mom was doing fine. Every time I mentioned her, he flinched. Finally, I asked, "Why can't she know I'm here?" He sighed. "It's complicated. She wouldn't understand." What wouldn't she understand? That I never stopped caring. I wanted to believe him. I wanted those words to mean something. But there was a hollowness in them, a performance he'd perfected. I left after an hour, heart heavier than when I arrived. Driving home, I couldn't stop replaying his face, his tone, Those first words, "Don't tell your mother." It felt like a command that reached backward in time, explaining everything I didn't understand as a child. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the empty chair across from me. The same emptiness now dressed in adult logic. I thought about how silence can be inherited, how children grow up carrying the shame of things they never did. Why was I ashamed of his shame? Why did his secret feel like mine? A week later, he called. His number flashed on my phone like a ghost coming back for another haunting. "I'd like to see you again," he said. "Just us. Somewhere quiet." I hesitated. I should have said no, but curiosity is its own addiction. "Okay," I whispered, and that was how it began. The meetings, the secrets, the slow unraveling of everything I thought I knew about truth, love, and loyalty. We met in places nobody noticed: a cafe, a park bench, a bus stop near the warehouse district. He always chose the spot. I practiced secrecy like a new language. Arrive early, face the wall, pretend normal. He brought stories instead of flowers. "Your mother hid my letters?" he said, spoon ticking against the glass. When I asked why he hadn't gone to court, he exhaled nobly. "I was young. I made mistakes, but she punished us both. I wanted him more than I wanted proof, so I let his edit stand and called the feeling relief. He touched my shoulder, used a nickname, told the waitress I was brilliant. 'Kiddo,' he'd murmur, and the word landed where I was hollow. I mistook being claimed for being loved. Every silence he blamed on someone else. Every absence wore a costume called misunderstanding. The requests began in late spring. He was pale, late, breath-hitching. "Cardiology stuff," he said, gripping my wrist. "They're holding a test until I pay a deposit." He said my full name. I pressed an envelope into his hand and decided that made me part of his future. When my account dipped, he texted, "Thank you, sweetheart. Your mother would never understand our bond." I pictured the empty chair from my childhood table and pretended I'd finally filled it. Money became our ritual. Co-pays, prescriptions, gas for interviews, a phone bill mistake that kept arriving. Each ask was braided with flattery and doom. "You're the only one I can trust. We're rebuilding something real. If your mother finds out, she'll poison the well." I began to measure my worth in private transactions. I lied without thinking. Sundays were book club. Text threads vanished on schedule. My mother's relief, "Good, you're getting out more," felt like a dare I kept winning. At night, I watched two versions of my childhood argue behind my eyes. In one, my mother was a gatekeeper. In the other, my father was a magician, pulling explanations like scarves until I forgot what I'd asked. Why was I ashamed of his shame? He dreamed out loud about beginnings. "I'm moving soon," he said. "A little studio. Our place to reconnect." Then, like a punchline, "There's a deposit." I heard myself say yes. We drove past a building with crooked blinds, and he pointed to a window that supposedly contained us. On the way back, he said casually, "Your mother called me yesterday." He offered proof of illness, a photo of a hospital bracelet, a clinic brochure with symptoms circled. "I want to be around when you need me," he whispered. I moved money and the fence posts of my boundaries. When my banking app flashed red, I practiced saying no to the mirror. The mirror believed me. My thumbs didn't. He texted, "Proud of you already." The word already sounded like a debt. The truth cracked in the produce aisle. My aunt bumped her card into mine and smiled like we were sharing mischief. "You look like love," she said. I laughed too loudly. "Work," she tilted her head. "You were always your father's girl. He doted on that other one too." The floor lurched. "Other one?" She blanched. "I shouldn't. Well, he had a baby the year he left. A girl, your age." She touched my sleeve. "I thought you knew. I walked out without buying a thing." In the car, my hands shook with a family tremor. I called him. He answered on the second ring. "Kiddo, I'm heading into an appointment." "Do I have a sister?" Silence organized itself. "Where did you hear that?" "Do I have a sister?" He sighed. "Yes." The world didn't end. It rearranged. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. He slid into professional calm. "You're emotional." "I didn't want to hurt you," he said. "I needed a solid first." I thought about envelopes and Sundays. "You asked for money before you offered honesty." He winced. "That's not fair." "Neither is gravity," I said, and hung up. I sat on our bench and watched pigeons peck at empty cement. I texted, "I won't be your secret." He replied, "Then don't be. Just keep your mother out of it." So that was the bargain. Disclosure, as long as it didn't threaten control. He and my mother were still talking. I was the only one who didn't know the script, and somehow I was funding the production. That night I searched for her. It took minutes. A woman with my father's eyes and my mother's stubborn chin, birthday 3 months after mine, smiling beside a man labeled Dad. Envy and relief took turns in my throat. I pressed my palm against the screen as if I could touch the life that grew on the other side of my silence. I wrote my mother an email and didn't send it. I wrote my father a letter and didn't send that either. I opened the shoebox from the attic and held the postcard that had started this pilgrimage. "Don't tell your mother," his voice repeated, but now it sounded exactly like a lock. "We're taught to hold hot pans without noise. Don't drop, don't scream, don't burn dinner." I decided to set the pan down. In the morning, I made tea and performed small rebellions. I moved a chair away from my kitchen table and pushed it back, erasing the choreography that had organized my life around an empty place setting. I called my mother. "Can you come by this afternoon?" She hesitated. "Is something wrong?" "I'd rather tell you face to face." I called my father next. "Same cafe later," I said. He sounded relieved. "Knew you'd understand." Sunlight spilled across my floor with weather's indifference. I called my aunt and asked for facts, not folklore. She gave me names, months, a park where Sundays overlapped. Something inside me tipped from begging to choosing. I wasn't finished hurting. I was finished helping the hurt disguise itself. I dressed, pocketed my keys, and pictured both of their faces practicing their lines. I would not audition. I would ask questions and let silence be their answers. Who lied? Who paid? Who benefits from the version where I stay quiet? I pictured that childhood chair and felt its power drop from throne to stool. If I left immediately, I could claim the corner seat by the cafe window, the one where light is unforgiving. At the door, my phone buzzed twice. 2 apologies warming up, 2 explanations oiling their throats. I didn't open either. The secret I finally understood had never been about protecting anyone. It kept me manageable. I locked the door behind me and walked toward the meeting that would either detonate us or rebuild us from honest rubble. The wind lifted my hair as if to check for wings. I don't know which version of them will arrive, the performers, the victims, or the parents, but I know my first question, the one that strips varnish from decades of shine. I will sit where the light is brightest and ask it, steady and plain. Who gets to keep the silence now? I arrived at the cafe early, heart steady in my chest but hands trembling just enough to betray me. I had my evidence tucked neatly inside a manila folder. The letters he said my mother hid, the bank transfers, the messages dripping with charm that curdled into control. For years, I had played witness to their versions of the truth. Today, I would become my own. My mother came first. She looked smaller than I remembered, the years having pressed her shoulders forward. My father arrived moments later, wearing that same wary smile, already rehearsing his defense. The 3 of us sat in a triangle of tension, the air thick with all the words we'd never said. "I thought this was about catching up," he said lightly. "It's about catching lies," I replied. He chuckled, but his eyes darted between us. My mother wouldn't meet mine. She stared at the condensation sliding down her glass, as if the story of our family was written there, too slippery to hold. "I know about her," I began. "My sister?" My mother's head snapped up. My father froze. "Don't," he warned. "Don't what?" "Tell the truth?" I asked. "Because that seems to be the family rule, doesn't it? Silence first, honesty never." The words sliced cleaner than I expected. For once, no one interrupted. My mother's voice cracked. "I was trying to protect you. From what? From knowing the man you kept in my nightmares? Or from finding out you both made choices that broke me? Tears filled her eyes. He left, but I didn't want you to hate him. I leaned back, feeling that statement settle like dust. So you decided to let me hate myself instead. My father cleared his throat. I wanted control over my story. That's all, I laughed. You had control, Dad. You had the last word every time you said, "Don't tell your mother," every time you made me your secret. That's not control. That's cowardice dressed up as love. His face hardened. You're twisting things. Am I? I slid the folder across the table. There's your twisting. The texts, the transfers, the manipulation. You asked for trust, not forgiveness. You didn't earn either. Silence spread, thick and unmovable. For the first time, they looked at each other, not as ex-spouses, but as co-conspirators in the quiet crime of omission. I watched them both realize that I wasn't their child version anymore. I was the witness they couldn't edit. I kept your father's name from becoming poison, my mother whispered. I thought that was love. And I kept the truth from you, he added, voice faltering, because I didn't want to disappear completely. There it was, the truth, simple and pitiful. They had hidden everything, not to spare me, but to preserve themselves. Something inside me unclenched. The anger didn't evaporate, but it stopped owning me. I realized I didn't need them to admit guilt. Their fear was confession enough. I'm done being your secret, I said quietly. Neither of them spoke. I stood, hands steady now. You can keep your stories. I'm writing my own. As I turned to leave, my mother reached for me. Wait, she whispered. Please, I paused. You can call when you're ready to tell me the truth, not to defend it. The door chimed behind me as I stepped into sunlight, and for the first time in years, the world didn't tilt under my feet. I walked without guilt, without rehearsing who I had to be. Later that week, I found my half-sister. Her name was Lily. I stood outside her bakery for 15 minutes before walking in. She looked up from behind the counter, smiling politely, unaware of the storm standing before her. Can I help you? She asked. Yes, I said softly. I think we share something. Her eyes narrowed slightly, curious. I showed her a photograph. Our father at 25, grinning beside my mother. Her lips parted, confusion giving way to understanding. She didn't shout. She didn't run. She just whispered, "He told me you didn't want to know me." I shook my head. He told me you didn't exist. We stood there, two women raised in different lies, now facing the truth together. The air between us wasn't heavy. It was clean. I don't know what to do with this, she said. Neither do I admitted. Maybe we start by not keeping it a secret, she nodded, and for the first time, I felt peace, not the fragile kind that depends on other people's approval, but the kind that comes when you finally stop performing for ghosts. That night, I wrote in my journal, forgiveness isn't reconciliation. It's the moment you stop auditioning for someone else's version of love. The next morning, I took the shoebox from the attic and set it in the trash. I didn't need postcards to remember where I came from. I needed space to decide where I was going. For the first time, the empty chair at my kitchen table didn't feel like loss. It felt like choice. I stopped being the secret. There's a strange peace in telling the story out loud. It doesn't fix the past. It just stops it from owning the present. For most of my life, I thought silence was protection, that if I stayed quiet, I could hold everyone together. But all silence ever did was protect the wrong people. When you grow up between two versions of the truth, you learn to question your memory, your worth, even your right to speak. It took me decades to realize that being loyal to lies is still betrayal. Only this time, it's betrayal of yourself. I'm not the little girl staring at an empty chair anymore. I'm the woman who knows when to walk away from one. My father wanted control. My mother wanted to protect. But I just wanted peace. And peace begins where performance ends. Some family secrets are meant to be told. Not to destroy the family, but to save yourself. If you were in my place, would you have kept the secret or exposed it? If stories like this speak to your soul, subscribe and share. Someone else may need to hear they're not alone.